We shall see. Whatever. Huh. Interesting. Chair likes to move. Weird ways. Okie dokies. Cool. Welcome everyone to Philosophy Roulette number 224. And where I read and review philosophy papers live on air. You are welcome to stop by here on Twitch or join later on YouTube, leave a comment, and suggest papers and whatnot. But it's a little bit late tonight, but I was just like, you know what? Haven't streamed in a few days. Haven't done philosophy, so I was like, you know what? Let's just go do a quick and easy philosophy stream. See what's going on. See what's new. On the front page of the internet. That is Phil Papers. Alright, we've got Kant's argument for transcendental idealism and the transcendental aesthetic revisited. We'll click on it, why not? Bioethics moving forward, a problem for full ectogenesis. Ectogenesis is a fun topic. It's, having human babies not in human mothers or something. It's like there's a ton of issues around that. Always interesting stuff. The Suki Finn was here in New York, and she does a very good job at this stuff. So I've seen her, read some of her stuff on air here, and also heard her talk on the topic, and it's quite good. Alright. Moving forward, I'll just click on, see if it's available, exit, because I do like the topic. So nope, no full-on ectogenesis, which is too bad. I kind of want paper on ectogenesis. Last philosophy stream I had a request for philosophy of biology, and so this is one of these topics that's like it's right at the edge of ethics and philosophy of biology. It's just a good old. Do I have access? Nah, I don't have access here. Shucks, but that's okay. It's something to maybe look at later. Maybe I'll hold on to it. Journal of Philosophy, a sideways look at faithfulness for quantum correlations. Let's just click on Journal of Philosophy. I don't really want to do like too much hardcore. I'm a little tired at the moment, but I want a quick philosophy stream. Of course, there's no such thing as quick philosophy, but let's see. This is a review. I was like, oh man, that'd be so cool. This is like 7 pages on the alleged instability of externalist anti-skepticism. Alright, let's go see about that. Please be available. Boo. Not available. It's not going to be on PCD's net. Comments and criticisms. Shucks, that was too good to be true. Let's see, this is, how many pages? That's 14 pages. Well, let's click on it. Let's see if that's a review. There's nothing else. Let's see what's forthcoming. Not available. Despite attempts to apply causal modeling techniques to quantum systems, they say you can't do it. Let's just see. It's on archive. Let's see, if it's too killer, I won't do it, because if there's too many formulas, yeah, this is a problem. It's technical work, and what am I going to do? Be like up, down, turn, like up, like rotated turnstile, beta, bar, alpha. That's too bad. I'm sure it's a nice paper, but I just don't want to, they're so hard to read like that. Forthcoming. We got a bunch of stuff, but there's no page counts on it. If P, then not, and then P. Matthew Mandelkern. I've read some of his stuff before. Let's see. The identity principle says that the condition with the form if P, then P are logical truths. Yeah, but you can get out of that pretty quick, because there's lots of Here's why I've read it, because I know something about the non-classical logic, and so let's give it a quick gander. One of 40 pages. I don't know if you guys can see right here, but that's 40 pages. This is so not getting read by me on air, which is too bad. 40 pages. What's interesting here is, look at this. This is a 1289. I don't know if you can see the text that small, but like, oh, Andrew Bailey. I think I read something by Andrew Bailey, or did I even look at this before? I think I clicked on this last time. 1 of 30, yeah. Can't really read that right now, but that's too bad. I think I've read, yes, I've read Andrew Bailey's work before. So, maybe some other time, but there's a little too much for right now. But it'd be good to keep in mind. You know what? Maybe I will just leave this open. I haven't done this in a while where I've had, what's it called? A few saved up to look at. Let's see. Rejection of consequentializing. I think, did I read this or something? Yeah, whatever. Let's see if there's anything more fun here. Nope. Huh. These are reviews at the bottom. Okay, let's move on then. Journal of the History of Ideas. Phronesis. Let's do some classicals. Synthes. We've got some philosophy of science. Yo, Bubba Bloop, how you doing tonight? Are you gonna stream? I don't think it's one of your nights, but I want to do a quick stream. I just haven't done any philosophy in a week or so because I've been trying to get the Minesweeper fixed. Oh man, I was looking at Cairo's stream and I realized I introduced a bug like 2 days ago, and like he caught it on stream. I was like, okay, you're streaming? Yeah, but that's like 2 hours from now for me. Okay, so all right. Oh, like I don't know if I'm even gonna go that long. Cool though. Yeah, like when I was looking to make the one of the new game modes work, I couldn't figure out why I had some code in there. So I guess, like, you know what, I'm like taking this garbage out. Let me erase something. Turns out that was pretty critical code. So I just hadn't like written down why it was critical. It was just one little itsy little minor thing that destroyed survival mode. Yeah, so just some small little bug that completely ruined survival mode. So it's fixed now, but like it only showed up every so often, so you could have played a few times and never noticed. But yeah. Alright, let's see, what is it? But it's fixed now. It's no big deal. So what do we got here? Oh, let me see. What it did was the blue bar could insta-kill you. The blue bar would insta-kill you because if you didn't click on the first row at the top, then the blue bar would hit the bombs at the top, like the covered up boxes. And so you have to, the game auto clicks like the first row for you when you play survival, so that the blue bar doesn't immediately hit the covered up bombs. And so you would insta die depending on where you, if you had, like, you clicked in the wrong spot when survival began. And I had fixed that because that clearly doesn't work. But I completely commented out the code like just 2-3 days ago. And like it only shows up sometimes, but like, yeah, it would have been bad. Everything's too long here. I can't read those. I want a short paper right now. Like something easy. What is deflationism about truth? 13 or 14 pages. That would be nice. And deflationism about truth is I wouldn't say it's easy, but at least it's an easy to explain topic. Oh, it looks like it's free. Yes, it's what's it called? This is a open access file. So let's see if it's let me see how long it is. "15 pages, and it's single spaced." That's kind of pushing it for right now. Alright, so we'll hold on to that. Let's see what else is here. We got radical views on cognition. That could be very cool, but there's just an introduction paper. What was the one before it? 10 pages on experiencing moral properties. Interesting. Propositions are not representational. 1 of 1, correction. That doesn't count. Indrek Reiland. It's available. I like you already, Indrek. 1 of 14, and it's kind of like spaced out. I like that. So we're going to try this one then. So we're going to do on experiencing moral properties. You know, there we go, by Indrek Reiland. I should have like advertised my stream today, but I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to stream. But yeah. Alright, so yeah, if you're in chat, there's the link, and if you come late, you can always do exclamation point paper, and feel free, Bubba Bloop. Yeah, I have to download the paper first. Did I download it? I don't think I did. No. Download. Save. Back. Don't, yeah. Feel free to, like, experience things as you wish. What did I just do? Hey, Kairos, typing's hard. How can I type those squid hands anyway? Squid hands are, what's it called? Those are global, Twitch emote things, actually, I'm pretty sure. So you can go into, like, your, like, little facey button here. And, like, you'll find it in, like, the global emotes at the bottom. Granted, I'm, like, on a... So, yeah, it's just, Squid 1, Squid 2, Squid 3, Squid 2, Squid 4. Like, you just type out the... Like, I don't know if you can see the... You just type that out. Let's see. Are we not going to load? There we go. Okie dokie. Oh, how we can type with them. Whoosh. Yeah, that is right. I mean, Bubba Bloop is very talented. Let's just put it that way. He can do many things with his squid arms. Alright, so we're reading On Experiencing Moral Properties by Indrek Reiland. I apologize for how I say your name and everyone's name and anything that isn't in the most obvious English. As always, feel free, anyone out in chat, to ask questions. This is my first time reading it too. I will do my best to explain things. I might get it wrong though. So, introduction. Do we perceptually experience moral properties like rightness and wrongness? For example, in Gilbert Harmon's classic case, when we see a group of young hoodlums pour gasoline on a cat and ignite it, can we, in the same robust sense, see the action's wrongness? Many philosophers have recently discussed this question, argued for a positive answer, and or discussed its epistemological implications. My main aim in this paper is to present a new case for a negative answer. Okay, so this person's going to say that we cannot see morality in some sense. So if you think you see something that is bad, you actually don't see it. You are, in some sense, using a... you're not perceptually experiencing it. It's some other experiential thing that's not perception. So it might be reasoning. It might be some sort of emotive thing, but it's not perception. Okay. Let's see what author has to say. To do this, we must first get much clearer on how such experience could be possible at all. I will do this by revisiting Robert Cowan's recent discussion of this in the course of responding to the so-called looks objection against possibility. Cowan argues, and nobody would deny, that perceptual experience of moral properties can't be like the experience of sensory qualities like colors. Okay, right there. I don't know if I would even accept that. I'm like a very odd person. I don't really know what you mean, what a sensory quality like a color is. We have SPS Kairos in chat. do you think the computer actually has a sensory experience of qualities like colors? What would their experience of qualities like colors be like compared to mine? And why would that be different from some other property? I'm not even sure that we have like sensory qualities like colors. We have other things, but like what is a sensory quality? I don't even understand like this phrasing here. I know what the author thinks they mean by this, but I'm not so sure that this actually makes a whole lot of sense in the general case. Like, I can see objects, I can see colors, but do I see objects of colors, or do I see the colors in a sensory quality way? And if so, is that an analysis already of the colors? So I can just like spot this, like this weird phrasing right here. Looks weird to me, and so I can tell you, like, maybe I have a problem already with this. Okay. But why can't a moral property be like colors? Okay, continuing. Besides me being grumpy about this. Instead, he compares it to experience of completion and to experience of a kind of membership. Okay, let's see what that means. I will argue that experience of moral properties isn't plausibly like those either. Experience of completion involves a sense of unity of form behind occlusion, but nothing like that is even remotely characteristic of putative experience of moral properties. Experience of kind membership relies on typical looks, but moral properties don't have typical looks. What is a typical look? I mean, I assume Lyons has something to say about this, but I don't know what a typical look is either. Rather, the right comparison case is putative experience of linguistic meaning, which is thought to involve employment of semantic competence, cognitively penetrating perceptual experience, and causing experience of meaning. Wow, that's a sentence right there. Sure. The right comparison case is like linguistic meaning. All right, but that's sort of hardcore, going like immediately for the whole shebang. Alright, similarly, putative experience of moral properties is only possible if some affective or cognitive state cognitively penetrates perceptual experience and causes experience of moral properties. Okie dokie. After having established how we could perceptually experience moral properties at all, I want to look at the case for the positive answer. I'll do this by responding to Preston Werner's recent extension of the familiar contrast argument used by Tim Bain and Susanna Siegel in the case of kind membership to moral properties. Werner argues roughly as follows. 1. A normal adult and a person lacking effective empathy have phenomenally different overall experiences upon seeing the hoodlums burn the cat. 2. This contrast is best explained by the fact that the normal adult sees the act is morally wrong, whereas the person lacking effective empathy doesn't. I respond by arguing that there is an alternative, much better explanation of contrast available. Finally, building on the work done before, I present my case for the negative answer by developing what I call the redundancy argument against experience of moral properties. I already see. I think I know where they're going with this. This is gonna be kind of interesting. I mean, this is sort of like what was this in the philosophy literature? There are things called zombies, and sadly, it is way less exciting than like what you probably think of zombies out there. Zombies that like act like us, like sound like us, look like us, but they have no like consciousness. They're just sort of like they're just like sort of automatons. And so this is a ethical version of it. So somebody who completely lacks empathy could like act or have the exact same experience that we do, but they don't have the empathy. So they're like moral zombies. They just a completely normal person, except a person that lacks any sort of empathetic world. And so they're going to say that's phenomenally different. They're going to have to say if it is a perceptual thing, then they are getting a different perception of the world in. And so that's kind of an interesting way of going about this. So this is going to be sort of an interesting argument that you can't be an ethical zombie and have the phenomenologically same overall experience. At least that's where I think we're going with this. Okay, how could we experience moral properties? 1. Completion. Everybody agrees that we can have sensations of, and that we can perceptually experience sensory qualities. Again, I'm already worried about that, but that's okay. Me aside. For example, consider the following pairs of sensations and perceptual experiences. So we've got visual, auditory, tactual, sensation, and perceptual experience here in a grid sort of thing. Table. So we got a visual sensation is seeing pitch black all around. See, that's a weird thing to see. Like, notice, like, do you actually ever see pitch black all around, or do you just not see? So that's an interesting thing. Okay, so a visual sensation is seeing pitch black all around. This is the distinction they're making. But seeing a red apple is an experience, perceptual experience. Auditory, hearing ringing in your ears versus perceptual experience is hearing a bird sing. Tactile is the sensation is feeling warmth on your arm, and perceptual experience is touching a ball. As can be seen, we visually experience at least color, more precisely hue, saturation, and brightness, auditory at least volume, pitch, and timbre, and tactilely what Matthew Fulkerson has recently called intensive features like thermal qualities, hot, cold, and texture qualities, smooth, rough. Now consider the common looks objection against experiencing moral properties. Experience of moral properties is possible only if there is a way moral properties look. P2. There is no way in which moral properties look. C. Experience of moral properties is impossible. Robert Cowan has responded to this objection by claiming that LO equivocates on the term looks. So, claiming that LO, where's LO? The looks objection, this whole thing. The whole thing equivocates on the term looks. He claims that if we think looks in terms of experience of sensory qualities, then P2 is plausible, but P1 isn't. However, if we think looks in terms of less robust sort of experience, then P1 is plausible, but P2 isn't. Okay, so what's going to happen is once you make sort of distinctions between different kinds of sensations, like this sort of the sensation and perceptual experience, then you can start slicing up this objection, because there is no way moral properties look, but depending on how you think of it as a sensation or as an experience, maybe different times, like a moral property might look one way, but then experience it a different one. So you might be able to, he's trying to, thread the needle here. In order for this response to work, we need to know more about the less robust sort of experience, which is supposed to provide a model for the experience of moral properties. Cowan tries to tell us more by drawing a distinction between what he calls phenomenal presence representation and phenomenal presence as absence representation. His main examples of the latter are experience of completion and kind membership. But, as I will argue next, neither experience of completion nor experience of kind membership provides the right model for experience of moral properties. We need a different model. Okay. In chat, feel free to ask questions or whatever along the way here. Let's start with the experience of completion. Even though experience of completion is frequently illustrated with drawings, and I will do so as well below. Oh, cool, I love philosophy drawings. The phenomenon is ubiquitous. In fact, one could claim that there is no properly perceptual experience without completion and constancy. Think back to the cases I presented above and contrast seeing pitch black all around you with seeing a red apple on a table. In the former case, you don't seem to see an object that you're confronted with apart from your own state. When you move or shift your gaze, your experience could slightly vary, but there is no sense of an object staying the same or being independent of your experience. In contrast, seeing a red apple on a table involves the objectification of both the apple and the table. When you move or shift your gaze, your experience varies, but there is a distinct sense of the object staying the same and being independent of your experience. Excuse me. I actually object to all of this. This is not how I view phenomenology, but I mean, this is a sort of standard thing, so I mean, it's like, I don't want to go into like me being grumpy about like this whole thing, but like I just sort of, it's the same thing I was saying above, like I kind of don't make these distinctions in the same way, and so it's like this is not a paper for me, because it's like I'm not in the whole, like my entire mindset is kind of different, so it's like I get that people view the world this way, but I mean, I'm just laying it on the table. There is nothing wrong with it. It's just not how I do it. And like, I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. But it's just, I just want to get that out there now. It's like, I just don't, like, this whole sort of conceptual scheme is not how I view the world. So that's all. Okay, continuing. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing against this author or even this entire literature. I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. Objectification is closely related to the perceptual duality of perspectivality and completion. Consider again looking at a red apple on the table. On the one hand, it's natural to think that in some sense you only see it see its facing surface and its qualities as given from your particular egocentric perspective. After all, only the facing surface reflects light to your retina, its backside does not. Yet, at the same time, you clearly have a sense of the apples being a whole three-dimensional object. This is an example of the duality of what's given from your perspective versus completion. For another example of completion, consider seeing the tail of the hind legs, the tail and the hind legs, and the head and the front legs of a cat behind a picket fence. Again, in some sense, you only see the unoccluded parts, yet at the same time you experience the cat as a complete object. Nothing like this duality and no completion more generally is present in the case of mere sensations like seeing pitch black. Now to some drawings illustrating amodal completion. Okay, so basically it looks like this one over here on the left and this one here over here on the right are the same sort of hexagon, but then there's something else going on over here. So I guess the trick is like, is this hexagon the same thing underneath the boxes? Very hard question. When looking at these drawings, observers typically report having a sense of the part occluded by a diamond completing as a diamond would, and the part occluded by a square completing as a square would. So I guess what they're saying is it looks like this underneath here is like this, because this is what I thought the first time, kind of, and this. It's fun. I get to actually draw on this for this. The one time I get to draw like well on this. Such cases of amodal completion involves a sense of a particular sort of unity in the object shape behind the occlusion. As such, they have a distinctive, perhaps imagistic phenomenology. It should be clear that the putative perception of the hoodlum's act's wrongness doesn't feature such phenomenology, and amodal completion doesn't therefore provide a good model for thinking about experience of moral properties. We need a different model. What? So the author here is arguing that because our brain fills in these sorts of like details depending on like how things are, we are like acclimated to understanding the perceptual world, that a moral thing doesn't have this sort of interaction and therefore cannot be the same sort of thing that is going on in a moral perception. Because why? Well, can't you put some sort of moral block in front of them in the cat and therefore not believe it anymore? Say what we did was we suspended disbelief for a minute. This is not actually you watching kids burn a cat. This is you watching a movie of kids burning a cat where they put a big old "no animals were harmed in the making of this movie" disclaimer on the front of it. So that would be basically this moral occlusion, but you would be filling in the details of murdering the cat because you are suspending the disbelief when you're at the movies. You know none of that's real. So I'm not sure that there is no moral occlusion going on. You have to shift your concept of what a moral occlusion is. I mean, an occlusion is, but who's to say that like covering these different shapes is any different than putting a moral block in terms of morality here? So the phenomenology of being at the movies might be the same thing as the sort of modal completion going on, the amodal completion. So this is like the sort of thing, because like I said, my above phenomenology is different. I don't think of this in the same way. I don't think anyone else is going to be like, well, being at the movies is a phenomenological experience, but actually I think they would. Like going to the doctor's office has an effect on your health. Like people get better just by like going to the doctor's office and seeing the doctor, and like that has a boost in like effective rates of medicine. And so there is something about the way moral or medical information is presented to you that might actually be something about how your body fills this stuff in. So, yeah. Okay, if you have a question about that, if I wasn't clear, let me know. But I mean, I think it's pretty clear that, like, look, you might be thinking that this hexagon might be like these, but it might also be like when I drew the line on it like this. And I think that's a very nice point the author is making, but I don't actually think that the moral cases cannot be rescued here. All right, let's continue. Let's see, is anything in this footnote? I don't think so. Okay, 2. How could we experience moral properties too? Perceptual learning. Cowan's second example of less robust sort of experience is recognitional experience of kind membership. For example, take the perceptual recognition of a tree as a pine tree. Cowan follows Susanna Siegel, who has articulated the following picture of how such recognition works. A perceiver who can recognize trees by sight seems to have some sort of memory representation and some sort of perceptual input, such that the input matches the memory representation and the cognitive system of the perceiver registers that this is so. On this picture, a person acquires the capacity for recognizing pine trees by being shown exemplars that have a similar look, which we can think of as a cluster of sensory qualities, and being told that they belong to a category like a pine tree. This leads to the memory representation that pairs the look with the category. When the person then sees an exemplar and registers its look, the pairing is accessed, and the look is matched with the category, resulting in a categorization of the exemplar as a pine tree. Let's call this the matching model. Cowan hopes to extend this model to the experience of moral properties. Supposing that matching is plausible for pine trees, the ethical analog of the development of a pine tree recognitional capacity is that an ethical expert could come to possess a memory representations corresponding to, for example, wrongness, and that this is matched with perceptual inputs when there is some relevant correspondence in terms of a low-level features between the two. Okay, so is there some sort of like general look of like being bad? Unfortunately, the matching model can't be so extended. The basic problem is that it relies on typical looks. Pine trees can be perceptually recognized because they have a typical look and a particular profile of sensory qualities. Those pine trees that lack that look cannot be recognized. More generally, things that don't have a typical look can't be perceptually recognized at all. For example, my favorite things lack a typical look. Some look one way and others look another. Similarly, wrong acts lack a typical look. There is nothing visually in common between the hoodlums igniting the cat, a man cheating on his wife, and corporate fraud. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd argue for this between the exact way this person is, but like, this, I mean, I think they're 100% right here. This is, I don't know what the typicality of evil is. I mean, one of the things about like being evil is that it is not typical. There's no just like you can't see it. That's the whole point, is that it sneaks by you. So that if someone screws you over, it's because they don't look like what you thought evil looked like. So, yeah. So if anything, this is like completely going the wrong direction for moral properties. In fact, one might think that the looks objection is the strongest against the idea that since we can perceptually recognize things as belong to a certain natural and functional kinds, we can also perceptually recognize them as having moral properties. Thought of this way, the looks objection allows for a quite liberal sense of look, and then insists that moral properties don't have typical looks in this sense. In sum, neither experience of amodal completion nor recognitional experience of kind membership provides a good model for experience of moral properties. This also means that Cowan's response to the looks objection doesn't work. However, all is not lost. It's a Freudian slip there. I said not all is lost. However, all is not lost. One can try to adopt a different model and try to respond to the objection differently. Okay, I don't have anything else to say about this one. I mean, I completely agree on the second case, and the first one I disagreed with, but that's okay. 3. How could we experience moral properties? 3. Semantic properties and the non-matching model. Okay, so now we're going to get into like some linguistics, maybe semantics. Consider another frequent example of putative experienced high-level property, linguistic meaning or semantic properties. Experience of meaning is not thought to be like experience of kind membership, since it doesn't proceed on the basis of typical looks or sounds in the sense of profiles of sensory qualities. Words that mean the same can look and sound completely different, either within a language, ophthalmologist and eye doctor, or across languages. I'll try to say the Estonian. Koristemi means clean in Estonian, but adorn in Finnish. Thus, if meanings are experienced, they aren't experienced on the basis of looks or sounds. Rather, the experience of meanings, if it exists, must work roughly as follows. Oh, wow. There's like a huge, like, the problem with this sentence, I mean, the reason I'm stopping right here, and I mean, I'm sure the author is going to say something perfectly fine. It's just, that's such a wow sentence because we've been arguing about what meanings are for thousands of years now. So it's like, okay, it must be like this. Well, we've got like thousands of years of history. I'm sure we found out what it means. Okay. Sorry about being snarky. First, you hear some sounds and hear them as particular phonemes. Yep, I'm sure that can already be disagreed that we don't hear that, like, the phenomenological objection is that you hear the sounds as words to begin with. You don't have to hear them as phonemes. I mean, that's straight up, I think that's Husserl. So Husserlian phenomenology. You do not see them. You do not hear them as parts. You hear them as wholes to begin with. Okay, second, you hear or otherwise recognize the sounds as utterances of particular words and sentences qua expression types. Third, you employ your semantic competence with the words and sentences qua expressions in a particular language. Finally, you couple this with the knowledge of the speech situation, for example, who the speaker is, location, time, and world of the utterance, addressee, etc., to figure out the locutionary act the speaker performed. After all this, your employment of semantic competence cognitively penetrates your auditory experience, causing you to also hear the sounds as utterances of particular words and sentences qua expression types used with particular meanings. Okay. Yeah, see, there's a distinct phenomenological tradition that does not go with this. And like, I happen to be sympathetic, at least to some degree, with that. That basically it has this whole situation flipped. The situation is flipped in the sense that you hear the words and you get the sense of like what's going on in words first, and then you can break it down into phonemes and all that other stuff. But you didn't know what what was to be broken down into phonemes unless you heard the whole word, and until you actually understood the concept of how to what there was to be broken down. You couldn't do that without having, like, in some sense, already understood it in a certain way. And so, since you have to, and there's something to that. I don't know, I'm not here to argue with the whole thing at the moment, but there's something to the order in which you actually understand things. And do you actually put phonemes together to make words, or do you get words in, you understand the words first and then break them down to phonemes? So we don't, I mean, very hard to actually study this question. Because usually from the scientific perspective, you have to pick one. And then you can look at it, but you can't study like the sort of way you're going about it. Okay, continuing. It's natural for someone who adopts this model to respond to a looks objection against the experience of meaning by simply denying P1, the claim that experience of meaning is possible only if they look a certain way. Rather, one can claim it is possible due to direct cognitive penetration by a background state. So you're getting like sort of direct access to some sort of experience, I guess. That's what they're arguing here. I mean, maybe that's closer to what I was saying. Cowan briefly mentions a very similar model of how experience of moral properties could work, calling it the non-matching model. On this view, the perceptual experience of the hoodlums burning the cat first causes an emotional experience or an intellectual seeming or a judgment that the act is wrong, and then one of these cognitively penetrates the perceptual experience, causing you to further see the act as wrong. Okay, so in this case, this is kind of what I'm going for, or at least this is closer to what I was saying. It's that you're going to get some sort of like emotional, like you're getting disgust. That's what you're going to get. You're going to see some people like burning a cat, and you're going to get disgusted and horrified at the act of hoodlums burning a cat. And then that sort of tells you kind of how to analyze the situation because you had that visceral reaction. Okay. Now, Cowan mentions the no-matching model as one possible model. My point here is that it's the only plausible model of how experience of moral properties could work, and on this model, one should respond to the looks objection by simply denying P1 and claiming that the experience is possible due to direct cognitive penetration by emotion or a judgment. Okay. The fact that putative experience of semantic properties is the right model for experience of moral properties is highly significant in considering whether the latter occurs. No one denies that completion is perceptual, and most people working on recognitional experience of kind membership agree that it's at least partly a perceptual and not a wholly cognitive phenomenon. Okay. But lots of people deny that we perceptually experience semantic properties and claim that this is a wholly cognitive phenomenon. Furthermore, as we will see next, the standard arguments used to argue for experience of kind membership don't extend quite as easily to the case of experience of semantic and moral properties. Okay, so they're saying, yeah, you can, but they don't think it works with the other stuff. Alright, so again, let me know if you have any questions, but we're getting to like the mid part of the paper here. So basically what's happened is like, look, do you think that you can see things are wrong? Do you just be able to see it in some sense? And then the question is like, well, what is it to see? And they gave some outlines and they said, look, maybe there's a way to do it, but it's not going to work out for all the ways that we like to think we see the world. Alright, the contrast argument. A standard way of arguing for the experience of kind membership and or meaning is by using a phenomenal contrast argument. The argument works by starting from an obvious contrast in phenomenology between the overall experience of a person who lacks some sort of capacity, for example, a recognitional capacity for a kind semantic competence with a particular language, usually called the novice, and the overall experience of the same person after they've acquired that capacity, now called the expert. Preston Warner has extended this argument to the moral case. However, he uses an interpersonal case. Consider two individuals. One of them is a normal adult, Norma. The other one is an emotionally empathetic dysfunctional individual, Edie. Pathos. So we got Norma and Pathos, who has a fully functional theory. So Pathos, who has a fully functional theory of mind and being able to attribute mental states to others, yet can't feel any empathy towards them. Alright. Now imagine Norma and Pathos see the hoodlums ignite the cat. It seems plausible that Norma's overall experience, O1, of which the perceptual experience, E1, is a part, and Pathos is... Okay, so we got perceptual experience is E1, which is a part of the overall experience, and Pathos overall experience O2, of which the perceptual experience E2 is a part differ in phenomenal character. For Siegel, the argument now proceeds as follows. O1, the two experiences of the two people differ in phenomenal character, so they have a different experience of the world, basically. If O1 and O2 differ in phenomenal character, then E1 and E2 differ in phenomenal character. So the overall experience is different, so the experience of the perceptual experience is different. Therefore, E1 and E2 differ in phenomenal character. If E1 and E2 differ in phenomenal character, then E1 and E2 differ in which properties one perceptually experiences while having them. Therefore, E1 and E2 differ in which properties one perceptually experiences while having them. If E1 and E2 differ in which properties one perceptually experiences while having them, then E1 and E2 differ in whether one perceptually experiences the wrongness of the hoodlum's act while having them. Therefore, E1 and E2 differ in whether one perceptually experiences the wrongness of the hoodlum's act while having them. Okay, so if you have different experiences, then you have experiences that inform you of whether the act is wrong. Okay. The argument has three substantive and controversial premises which require defense, 2, 4, and 6. Going in the reverse order, 6 can be supported by arguing that differences between E1 and E2 are not due to their experiencing different non-moral properties. I find this very plausible. Similarly, 4 can be supported by arguing that the differences between E1 and E2 are not due to differences in non-representational aspects of how their phenomenology or raw feels. Aspects of their phenomenology or raw. I don't know what a raw feels is. If there are any. I find this relatively plausible as well. Finally, 2 can be supported by arguing that the best way to explain why the overall experiences 1 and 2 differ in phenomenal character is by taking E1 and E2 to differ in phenomenal character. I think this is where the argument fails. Okay, so let's find out why. Norma and Patho's overall experience, O1 and O2 clearly differ. In order to be able to infer from this that their perceptual experience E1 and E2 differ, one must rule out alternative explanations. Werner considers 3 such explanations, namely that Norma's and Patho's overall experience differ because... Alright, so this is N. Who's N? Norma. Norma judges believes that what the hoodlums are doing is wrong, whereas Pathos doesn't. 2, and desires that the cat's suffering end, whereas Pathos doesn't. Norma has the seeming intuition that what the hoodlums doing is wrong, whereas P doesn't. Werner argues against 1 as follows. It's true that Norma arrives at a moral judgment that what the hoodlums are doing is wrong. However, he claims that it is possible that Pathos has been trained to think that as a matter of general principle, such acts are wrong, and that he arrives at such a judgment as well. However, even if that were the case, the phenomenal contrast would remain. Werner's argument against 2 is similar. It's true that Norma has a desire that the cat's suffering end. However, perhaps Pathos has been trained to have such a desire for instrumental reasons as well. However, even if that were the case, the phenomenal contrast would remain. Furthermore, it might be that in certain circumstances, even Norma would lack such a desire because even though she can experience the act as being wrong or prima facie wrong, she knows it's necessary to prevent a larger calamity from happening. Yes, because that cat was evil and going to take over the world and could only be killed by some hoodlums burning it. Finally, we come to 3, the view that their overall experience differ because of different seemings or intuitions. Werner argues against this by first noting that there are 2 ways of thinking of seemings. Either seemings are belief dispositions to believe or sui generis states. If the former, then similar arguments apply as before. However, the most common and most interesting construal of seemings is as sui generis states. Here he has 2 things to say. First, that he doesn't accept this construal. Second, that it would be implausible to explain phenomenal contrast in the case of experience of kind membership by appeal to a priori intuitions, and thus, by analogy, it would be implausible here as well. But here the waters are muddled by the addition of a priori before intuition. Lots of people, perhaps the majority, who have thought about the phenomenal contrast in the case of kind membership think that it is precisely to be explained by the appeal to the fact that only the expert has a perceptual seeming or intuition to the effect that the thing is seen is a pine tree. And many people also hold a similar view in the moral case. Yeah, so you don't actually get any intuition until you've been trained up a bit. So it's like you need the training in some sense to get the to actually have like the right sort of feelings about the world. So you can't just say, look, there's no contrast or there's no kind membership, because you need to do work to get it. Like, just because it's not there doesn't mean anything, because you had to do work to get it in the first place. All right. Be the strength of Werner's argument against the 3 options as it may, he doesn't consider the simplest and most obvious alternative explanation, namely that Norma's and Pathos' overall experience differ because the former feels empathy with its distinctive affective phenomenology and the latter doesn't. So the author here is just putting it completely on the person. It's not in the world the way things look, it's completely in the person. Okay. It's built into the case that Norma feels empathy and Pathos doesn't. After all, empathy is supposed to be what cognitively penetrates the perceptual experience and causes seeing the act's wrongness. But empathy has plausibly a distinctive affective phenomenology in itself. Why doesn't Werner consider this obvious explanation? He seems to acknowledge that something distinctively affective seems to underlie the contrast. However, he only considers the view that empathy is what explains the difference under the rubric of differences in affective raw feels, and dismisses this as implausible because he thinks that effect is intentional. However, he never considers the view that empathy has affective intentional phenomenology. I submit that the most direct explanation is that the contrast is due to phenomenology. It's a such phenomenology. We need further reasons to think that the contrast is distinctively perceptual. Okay. I mean, this is where the author is sort of laying down their cards. They're saying, look, it's in your head where the empathy is. It's not in the world that there's a moral thing going on. It's that it's all in the mind. And the author is saying, look, this is the most obvious thing. Now, I don't know if it's the most obvious thing. I do agree that this is an obvious way to go, but I'm not actually entirely sure it's the most obvious way to go, because people want to say that there are moral truths out there. A lot of people do, at least. And so they want to say that there's something in the world that you're picking up on. If you say it's all in your head, you're going to start to get into relativism. And I think that's why people want to resist this sort of idea. So you want the empathy to be correlated with something in the world, not the empathy just to exist in your head. So, yeah. Because it seems to, like cut it off from like actually having a basis in reality. If you don't have something in the world, there's no perceptual thing that you're getting in, like the color. Because you want to say the color's in the world in the same way that you want to say that the morals are in the world. Sorry, I'm shaking in my headphones. That the same way the colors in the world, you want to say the morals in the world. And people want to resist just saying, nah, it's in your head only. Because then it starts sounding like relativism. Okay. Continuing. Oh yeah, and please, ask questions if you'd like. We're getting close to the end here. Having discussed the alternative explanation, we can now state the redundancy argument against experiencing moral properties. Hey, Bubba Bloop, welcome back. I hope you had a good meal. Hey, cool. Here's a natural philosophical picture of the steps involved in Norma's experience and arrival at the moral belief that what the hoodlums are doing is wrong. First, she perceptually experiences the hoodlums burning the cat. Second, she has an effective empathetic response to what she sees. Third, this leads her to having the moral seeming intuition or judgment that the act is wrong. Finally, she endorses the seeming intuition judgment and forms the belief that the act is wrong. What's different with Pathos is that upon experiencing the burning, he fails to have the effective empathic response and thus doesn't form the moral seeming intuition, even though, as Warner argues, he could form the judgment on general grounds. If we don't experience moral properties, then the above picture is complete. However, if we do, then the above picture includes a further step, namely the effective empathic response of the seeming intuition and judgment also cognitively penetrates the visual experience, causing you to see the action as wrong. Now notice that the effective empathic response together with the seeming intuition and judgment suffices to explain Norma's moral stance on the case, her belief that the act is wrong. Postulating the further step involving cognitive penetration of visual experience doesn't seem to add anything to this story at all. As far as the arrival at moral belief, it is completely redundant. This shows that we need other reasons to postulate it. The only other reason standardly mentioned is that such experience explains phenomenal contrasts like the one appealed to by Werner. But, as I argued above, the effective empathic response can do that on its own. Thus, the postulation of further cognitive penetration of perceptual experience by the effective empathic response is explanatorily redundant. Hence, absent any other reason to postulate it, we shouldn't. So this is an Occam's razor argument, really. Let me close by noting that the redundancy argument can be thought of as a challenge to all those who want to argue that what we experience moral properties. For this to be plausible, there must be some work for it to do, but given that such experience relies on the presence of a state that seems to be able to already explain everything there is to explain, it's very hard to see what work that would be. Okie doke, fun paper, and this is kind of where I thought we were going. It's that what the author did here was they shifted the burden of work off the world. Like, there's no more morals in the world. It's all in your head. And once it gets in your head, then you have an empathic response, and that sort of like is a property or power or ability of the human mind to have empathy. And once it does that, it then does all the work you need, and there's no reason to postulate there's anything in the world that you're perceiving or seeing that is moral. There is no moral perception because there's nothing out there doing anything. It's all in your head to begin with, and if you were to postulate such things, you're just making stuff up for no good reason because you already have all the stuff that needs to happen going on in your head. Now, I think you can see where my objection is. It's that I already mentioned it right up here, is that people want to say that there's objective moral properties in the world. And how are you going to get that if the empathy is always in our heads? There is no standard to judge empathy. Who's to say norma is normal and pathos is pathological here? Pathos would be like, no, norma's crazy, I'm right. And norma would be like, well, pathology is just, pathos is nuts. And I mean, norma's correct. But once you start doing this, then it just becomes a sort of relativistic, well, this is how I feel about the world, and burning cats is wrong. And then pathos comes along and be like, no, burning cats is fine. Go right ahead and burn cats. And everyone's going to, like, all the normal people are going to be like, that's wrong. But now you're biasing your entire way you feel about the world. You're calling us the normal people and pathos the not normal people based on nothing. It's just, well, this is how we feel about it and not how the world actually is. So this is why I think people would have been avoiding this sort of thing. Now, that's not to say this is a bad argument. This is an excellent argument because I think it shows that all the work can be done without relying on anything out in the world. You don't need to, like, postulate some weird metaphysics to say that we see something that, like, obviously it's not an apple, it's not a cat, it's not like normal, like it's not a color red, because you can't see like goodness like the color red. I agree that, well, I don't know if I completely agree, but like most people aren't going to try to fight that sort of argument. So it's like, it's off that sort of basic thing. Where is the actual moral decision? Where does it exist? Is it out in the world or is it only in our head? That's sort of what's going on here, underlying this. And if you're going to take the hard line like the author does, you can say, look, you don't need the morality to be out in the world to get everything we want out of it for us, but everything we want out of it, us normal people, we're the normal ones that know that burning cats is wrong. And so you don't need to worry about this sort of perceiving of moral things. But again, I'm afraid there's a bias right there that, well, we know burning cats is wrong, and that's why it's okay that it's, because we're the normal people. But again, people don't want to do that because they want to say, no, burning cats is wrong for a stronger reason than we just feel that way. All right, so anyone have any questions about this? I'm a little concerned I oversimplified this argument here. Yeah, see, this defining the person as emotionally empathic, dysfunctional individual, pathos. This has already poisoned the well, as it were, for what's going on. My fear, to get technical about it, is that this distinction already begs the question. You know it's philosophy, but yes, Bubba Bloop. What else do I have to say? What is the author trying to get from writing this? One sec, let me see something. This is in a rather well-recognized journal, first of all, so they're going to get a publication out of this. Two, this is a naturalistic argument, actually. Even though I've been kind of fighting against it, this is basically saying, look, we don't need to have crazy metaphysics here. We can do this in sort of a sciencey little way. Because if you can say, look, the empathy is based in your brain, then you don't need to have like these crazy metaphysics where you're saying like morals are out in the universe. But like that's a little bit more heavyweight in terms of morals. So this is actually a very science, sort of the scientific worldview. And so this is a paper fighting for the scientific worldview. I'm actually fighting against that in this case, just because I don't quite like the way they went about it. But like, again, I'm neither here nor there. But why would you do it? Why would you write this? Because this is more in line with basically how the world is viewed nowadays. And so they're trying to make an argument to show, look, you don't need to have the world have this like excessive metaphysics where you have like weird moral things that are like colors, like, because no one thinks like morals exist out there like colors under this sort of like scientific worldview. And so why would we have that if we don't need to have that? And the author is showing we don't need to have that. We can get everything we want with just sort of the standard view of things, as it were, right now. And so it's in the sort of standard view, in sort of like a more general standard view of the world, they're defending that sort of that view of the world against what might be considered a way out of it by saying no, because we actually perceive moral things in the world, there is more to the world than just like what we think of as like experiences, like just sort of like the basic experiences of like seeing color. So in that sense, this is in a bigger tradition, in sort of the naturalistic tradition, fighting against the more rationalistic or metaphysical tradition, saying that we see more of the world, we get more of the world as like, not the rationalistic, but it's more of like a, could say, what is it? But it's, again, yeah, just a scientific worldview, you might put it that way. Against like sort of maybe an ethical worldview where you say the world exists in some sort of ethical space, and that is how we really experience the world, as ethical things. And once you're taking that away by putting that into the mind. So yeah, I mean, you can see like this whole sort of like scientific view of like how things are broken down, how they argued for it here. So in some sense, how they even argued for the whole thing is they tried to get us into this sensory qualities right up here at the beginning, where I started to object to how they were describing things immediately, because they're trying to get into the scientific sort of like this quantitative like they're trying to get you into the quantitative empirical worldview. And once they do that, then they can make their argument go through. And they say, look, you've got crazy extra metaphysics, you don't need this extra metaphysics, it's excessive, and once you have excessive metaphysics, like, then your philosophy is bad. That's basically what it comes down to. And like I said, it got down to here at the bottom, it was Occam's razor, where they were saying, look, once we can explain this in sort of the scientific worldview, then the other philosophy just becomes excessive and redundant and unnecessary. So, yeah. Any other questions, please ask. If that wasn't clear enough, let me know. I will try to do a better job. Don't always know if I do a good job. Let's see. How did this author argue for this stuff? Well, the first part was basically laying out the scientific sort of view of perception, then saying, look, morals don't fit into this worldview of how perception exists. And since it doesn't fit into that worldview of how perception exists, the non-matching model and the looks objection and that sort of thing says, look, it doesn't fit and you don't need it. So yeah, that's kind of how it has been laid out. This is the way this sort of view of the world is. It's a scientific worldview. This sort of these authors who are saying that you do perceive morals from in perceptual experience, that doesn't match with the top of the line philosophy in terms of how we see the this view of the world, and therefore this sort of moral picture does not work in the sort of general picture of the world. So that's the general structure of the argument here. Let's see, is there anything else that needs to be said? I don't know. Again, yeah, let me know if there's any more questions. But yeah, it was not a bad paper. It's pretty good. I disagree on the way the author has immediately broken down the world. So you have to just go right out from the get-go and be like, well, I'm not gonna buy the the mainline scientific view of the world, which I don't. But like you have to like kind of take that hard line right from the beginning, and then you don't have to listen to what the person's saying because, well, you diverged immediately, and so you weren't in that sort of like tradition. You don't have the same sort of assumptions. But I mean, that's me. I wouldn't recommend that for other people. It's like dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Let's see. Moral properties don't have typical looks. What is so typical about a typical look? Yeah, see, this is a funny thing. It's like once you start asking what's typical, I don't know if we actually know exactly what is typical of typicality, or what's typicality of typicalness. You tell me, folks. Like, do you know what would it be? Because once you go one level up on being typical, it's like then you're in some sort of general class of things. And then what is that? It's like you can start see, the thing is you can like start poking at all these like big words right here. And that's kind of how I'm looking at this. It is a very standard view, and I think that most people would actually agree with how this author laid out the way perception is. But like once you start poking at these words, they're going to like, you're going to poke holes. There's going to be holes. So yeah. And the straight answer for what the author is trying to get out of this, the author is getting a publication out of this. That is the answer. Yeah. All right. I guess that's it for now. Yeah. I mean, to even make more fine of a point, they get to show off a little bit. They got pictures in their paper. I like pictures. I thought they did a good job with their pictures. I even drew on their pictures. This was well done. They're like a simple example, but I thought it was kind of effective, saying, look, there is some sort of way that we perceptually interact with the world that doesn't happen on the other ones. And I thought I came up with a fun counter example about suspended disbelief. So I actually really liked that. I don't normally get to do such fun things with philosophy papers. Let's see, is there anything else? Okay, if no one else has any questions, I'm sorry, I've got a bunch of people here now. I was meant to have a short stream. I'd love to keep going, but I'm just tired and I want to get something out there for some people, whoever's watching this stuff. I mean, if you guys want me to do another short paper, I'll look real quick, but if not, I'll end stream. But you guys let me know. I'm going to otherwise see if anyone else is online. I mean, Bloop, you're not streaming for another good, 45 minutes, so I can't raid you. Which is too bad. But what are you going to do? I wasn't planning on being on for too long. Yeah, well, Bloop will be raiding himself. That'll just be the thing. Yeah, I forgot if you were streaming or not, so I was like, oh, man. Okay, no one's on. Yeah, I should follow more people. Okay, everyone have a fantastic night. You should run polls in your Discord papers that look interesting. Yeah, that was definitely an idea that was suggested to me a while back. I will start getting on that. It's just within the last week or two I've been Takeshi boy, good to see you again. I just saw you the other night too, and catching you at the end of my streams. Yeah, that's definitely something I want to do is get some people. Oh, that's a good idea. So I have a Discord now. I was a philosophy major. Yes, Team Pyro. Welcome here. So what I'm gonna do eventually in the Discord is, well, if you guys suggest categories like philosophy, biology, someone suggested the other day, then I can read papers on philosophy or biology. I do take suggestions, so I don't have much of a discussion going at the moment, but I've just been very busy in the last 2 weeks with other things. And so you can jump in the Discord if you want, and let me know what's up. And I'm gonna start, maybe I'll put a bit more schedule, or I'll start posting when I'll be live, so that people can get in a little earlier. Also, all my philosophy papers I eventually post to YouTube, so that's on the YouTube link here. And so you're gonna see like 200 videos of like me reading papers on my YouTube. So that's it. I was a philosophy major. I tried to go to grad school. That didn't work out. I've spent an awful lot of time dealing with this stuff, and now I just been reading papers on Twitch to pass quarantine. So yeah. So let me feel free to jump in the Discord, like I said. Also, the Minesweeper stuff is I post Minesweeper updates, so that's probably what most people are here for. But yeah, I read philosophy papers and review them live. If you guys have suggestions, comments, papers you want me to read, the only request I make is that it's basically less than 20 pages. 16 is really where I like to cut it off, because that's like an hour and a half of reading. Like this paper here, I've been online for an hour 10 minutes. I didn't get it for wasn't reading for the first 10 minutes, but it's like 14 pages double spaced. Not quite double spaced, like space and a half or something. And so the length does matter, but yeah. Okay. Let's see, any interesting references here? No. Okay. So have a wonderful night, everyone. Stay safe out there. If you're in Texas, stay warm, which is such a weird thing to say. And yeah, have a good night, and I will see you all soon. Bye, Bubba Bloop. And yeah, bye, Takeshi Boy. Bye, Steam Pyro.